The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi, and welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Tony Palmeri, sitting in for Cheryl Hentz. Cheryl is recovering from surgery. She's fine, and she will be back for our next taping. And I am pleased today to be joined by two members of the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education. They are Steve Dedow, who is the Vice President of the board, and Allison Garner, who's the treasurer of the board. Thank you both for taking the time to come down.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We want to talk about a wide range of issues affecting the school district. Let's start with the recent governor's election. Governor Scott Walker was reelected, and we know that his Act 10 had some real impact on the school district. Teachers have been concerned about morale and things like that. Have you seen morale drop in the district among especially teachers?
Well, that's a timely question. We're coming around to trying to stabilize and put some structure behind our pay scales and our salaries and our benefits, and so that affects teachers, it affects administrators. We had an ex-counselor show up at our board meeting last night talking about, you give more money to these administrators, what have you done for teachers? And teachers are the meat of the district, and so I actually think, from what I hear, I think morale is better than it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
I think that we're righting a lot of wrongs.
Specifically, how are we doing that? What wrongs are we righting?
Well, we were not able to give even a cost of living increase to their pay scales. So we were able to do that finally. We sunk $1 million to make that, and to make that happen, as well as bring the people at the very bottom, bring them up a little bit so that we could kind of start our pay scale at a competitive place.
Okay. Steve, what have you, your observation of the morale issue?
I think it's dependent on some of the different groups, the collective bargaining groups. I think that it is lower than it was before Act 10. I've seen Act 10, there's some side effects of Act 10 I think that they weren't considering at the time. Like, it has become more of a free market situation. I heard that tech ed teachers are commanding $70,000 with no experience straight out of school right now because there aren't any. Chemistry teachers, counselors, psychologists are all, we had to jack psychologists pay substantially last year.
One thing I've noticed as a college teacher, I've been teaching for a long time here, and what I've always done is I've always approached the students in my classes who I think are the best students, and I've always said to them, have you ever thought about being a teacher? Because my theory is that when the best students become teachers, that we all benefit from that.
Right.
I don't want to blame this just on Act 10, but over the last 2, 3, 4 years, whenever I've said to the best student, have you considered being a teacher, I now get really odd looks, kind of like, why would I think of doing that? There's just this perception that if you're a teacher, you're kind of in the line of fire, that somehow your benefits are better than other people. And yet, teachers just starting out, I mean, right? You're not a millionaire starting out as a teacher in K through 12. But a lot of people think that it is. How would you account for that misperception?
I think a lot of it is quite frankly, media. One of the reports that we got last night, actually, the Visitor and Convention Bureau of Oshkosh called up Stan Mack unsolicited and wanted to know why that Oshkosh's educators weren't in the top 30 in this business newspaper. And Stan said, well, I don't know. We haven't really looked at it. And they got a report from DPI, and out of the 424 districts, Oshkosh is 224th as far as what we pay our educators. And so you're not making a lot of money. I mean, the reality of it is you're not. I believe it now that the bottom line is, at the bottom of the scale is 35,000 to start for, it was 32.8 or something.
Gosh, I don't know.
I think that's what it is for somebody coming in.
So you're starting out in the mid to high 30s, right, coming out, which is hardly, in 2014, that's not exactly the highest wage you can imagine. Do either of you have a sense of how many teachers or other personnel the district has lost since 2011, since 2010? I mean, do you get a sense that we have had, you know, what is your sense of it?
Well,
I mean, do we have an exact number?
There is. I couldn't quote it to you right off the top. I know that this last year we didn't lose as many as the year before. I want to say we lost 110.
Okay.
Last year.
Last year.
Yes.
This year it was not that much. It was maybe in the 60s or something. The retirements were major. There's a lot of educators that are, quite frankly, just moving up to other districts. They'll drive to Appleton, Neenah, or something where they get better pay.
And people have been retiring at maybe younger ages than they probably should. Is that fair?
I would suggest that that certainly happened in more than one case.
Yeah, which I think is unfortunate because some of those people with experience are really, really outstanding educators. And to lose those people, it hurts. It does hurt. And see, I think you're right. Those are kind of like the effects of something like Act 10 that.
Well, and in addition to kind of put salt in that wound is the standards and guidelines that are being pushed onto the world of education by the feds. You know, the USDA has killed our food service program. We used to be a profit machine. Now we are operating at a loss, $10,000 or something like that. Anyways, we're operating at a loss.
What did the USDA do to have this happen?
They provided guidelines for healthier lunches. It's a good thing, right? We all want healthy lunches. We want healthy kids. Participation went down. So we got to get a handle on that. But because it was pushed and it had to be implemented within a year, it was just, you know, here it is, and now it's no longer here. We have this. And so we lost participation, and now we're operating at a loss. As well as a lot of the standards that are coming from the feds in terms of where kids need to be, the benchmarks that they need to reach at certain levels. We are burning out kids and teachers, especially, because not only do they have to manage all of that curriculum and all of that content, but then in addition they have to test, and they have to test multiple times a year, and our elementary school teachers especially are really getting hit hard. Is
this all part of No Child Left Behind or Common Core or both?
Yes, and yes. Okay. And as they continue to tweak, we get more and more and more. And so suddenly, you know, they're getting crushed under the weight of all of these extra things that are being placed on them.
Well, the governor announced a few months ago that if he were to get reelected, which he did, he would ask the legislature to repeal Wisconsin's participation in Common Core and ask the state legislature or whoever to lead a movement to write specific Wisconsin core standards. Do you agree with him that we should leave the Common Core?
You know, okay, we leave the Common Core and then we're going to get something else, right? Because we're not going to operate without standards anymore because they're really important. Right. And what I'm learning now that I'm on the board for 4 years is that these standards are killing us.
Okay, why are because of all the testing?
I think that there's something that we're not doing right. Yes, standards are important, and yes, we want students to achieve a certain level at certain ages and at certain grades. I get it, but for some reason we're not implementing it properly because it's the teachers that are ending up burning out.
Yeah. Burning out. So, what's your sense, Steve, of Common Core?
Well, the thing that gets me about the whole deal is, I think we're up to $118,000 since Common Core was enacted a few years ago in professional development. That's just out the window. And this is over and over again. You'll see from either Madison or the feds will, enact something and then we have to react to something on a local level. Piggybacking off what Allison said in the USDA thing, combined both high schools, I want to say, raised $75,000 a year on fundraising with candy bars.
Right.
You can't do it anymore because if we do that, if we allow that in school, we lose USDA funding, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So how are the kids? I mean, are they going to push it with carrots? I mean, come on, nobody,
Right.
you know.
But like you said, right, it is, I mean, this is part of the Obama administration initiative, right? You want healthier kids, so don't they have to get candy bars out of the schools?
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how to answer that question. I feel like, you know, personally, if this were my universe and I could run the world,
Right.
I would have PE twice a day. It would solve so many things, right? It would solve the health issues, it would solve the behavioral issues, and then we could have candy bars. But
Teachers would have time too.
and teachers would have time, which they
develop
don't
curriculum.
have. Yep.
Do either of you think that Common Core is something that should just be done away with? I mean, I've always felt that if we have the most outstanding, talented teachers in the classroom, you're going to get the material taught that needs to be taught. I mean, is part of Common Core the idea that since you can't guarantee a certain quality of instruction, you have to make sure everyone does a minimum level of...
For myself, I think the concept of Common Core is valid. I was talking with a lady a couple of days ago, and she said that when she was a little girl, she was raised in Oklahoma, and her family moved when she was 9 up to North Dakota. When they got up to North Dakota, she was dropped 2 grade levels because her reading comprehension and her math skills were at that level in North Dakota.
Gotcha.
The idea of Common Core is that a child who's in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or Anchorage, Alaska, or Little Rock, Arkansas, at the age of 9 should have achieved this level of academic ability. And I think that the concept there is valid. The way we're going about it, there is an awful lot of testing that doesn't seem...
And training.
And training.
We're killing our teachers, that's the problem.
Professional development, and that's another, you know, so they repeal it. And they will. They won't even have to have a debate about it. They control the Assembly and the Senate.
Right.
So in January, when they repeal this, then where are we at? What standards do we do? I mean, so they're going to come up with these standards, and then what we're going to have to...
They'll probably end up looking a lot like the federal standards, right? I would think.
I would think.
All right. But the conservative critique, if I understand it correctly, is that the Common Core is just Washington taking over what should be a local issue, that each state district should have its own standards. Is that not?
Then you're going to have what
like
my
you just
friend
described,
had.
right?
You're going to have people in Oklahoma who have standards like this, and you know.
So it sounds like it's just a political football, really.
Yeah.
And the testing, though, if it sounds like the teachers are telling you that they're getting burnt out by...
They are telling us that.
They are telling you
Yes.
that, all right. What would they want to replace it with? I mean, in other words, I think the argument for the testing, especially at the elementary school level, is that that's the best way to see if material's being learned. So if we didn't have that amount of testing, what would they replace it with?
I don't know. But I do, you know, I've offered things, for example, in a classroom of, let's say, 24 third graders, okay? You will have to take a group of maybe 4 or 5 as a teacher, and you'll have to break them off, and you'll have to work with them on their reading to be able to assess their reading. They're called a DRA, reading assessment. So that leaves the other 20 or so kids on their own. And you just really hope that those 20 kids don't, you know, get in trouble over there because you now have to work with these kids. And so you can imagine that a teacher can do a group of 4 kids, maybe they can do a kid every 15 or 20 minutes. They have to do the assessment, they have to write it out, they have to grade it, they have to score it, they have to record it. Okay. They have to do that for 24 kids.
Right.
And it takes them weeks to get through this. And right when they're done with that, now they have Common Core that comes in with new standards that they also have to. So what's happening is, yes, we all agree that children in third grade should be at this certain level. And so one of the options is, can we have somebody else test these kids? And the teachers say, well, don't do that because then I don't know where they are.
Right.
And so if there were an easy solution, we would have had it by now.
Yeah.
We don't have a solution. We understand where we want to be. The implementation, I think, is where we really struggle.
You know, and it's interesting because all the testing, because this has been going on now since the early 2000s, right, when No Child Left Behind kicked in especially.
Yep.
And I noticed at the university with every first year class that comes in, the students really expect tests, that anything else that we do is thought to be kind of unusual. Right. If you think about it, I mean, I think testing is an important part of education, but I know a lot of educational theorists would say that it might be the least important educational tool, that maybe you need to have students demonstrate they can actually do something.
Right.
Right. I mean, I teach public speaking. I can test them about the elements of the speech, but when they get up and actually give one, I know whether they've actually
they can do it or not, right?
Or they can do it or not. So, do both of you also share a concern with me that we've gone too far in making the connection between school and business? That almost everything we do now is justified in terms of it's going to help them in the job market, and I don't think that that's not important. It is.
Sure.
But do you think we're losing track of the civic part of education? We just had the lowest voter turnout in 72 years. Nationwide. Now, we know that young people are not voting, right? But obviously with that amount of people not voting, it's people at all ages not getting out, right? Are we just not getting it across in our schools now that there are certain things you need to do as a citizen, or is it too much about work and nothing else? What do you think?
I would suggest that we are teaching our kids civic responsibility in almost every one of the elementary schools. Certainly they talk about community, they talk about being a good citizen. The whole civility project, all these things are geared toward community. That being said, what I've witnessed over the years with tech ed, like I was saying before about these tech ed teachers and stuff now, you had big business rushing out of this country, setting up this situation where manufacturing is collapsing. And now the little land manufacturers who are left are dying for people who have talent, in welding, electricians, with steam fitters, with whatever. And somewhere along the line, everybody was geared, we have to have everybody go to college.
Right.
And I don't believe that that is true.
I agree.
And I think that to have more business connection, especially on the tech ed side of things, the engineering side, is a good thing, because I believe in a lot of ways that is where common sense comes from. When you can create something, I mean, living out on a farm all those years and stuff where we were fixing stuff, you weren't going to run into town. You were going to get out of that old bucket back by the bench there and make something fit, and I don't think we see that in our kids. No, excellent point. What do you think, Allison, about the work civic
I think
issue?
What I'm hearing is that we've taken a turn towards, and it kind of rolls into what we were just talking about, is that a lot of it is based on the outcome. And how are we doing on our tests, and how those tests then lead into this, and where are we going to go with these kids, and it's all outcome.
Right, exactly.
And that creates a certain type of student that you're now seeing. You get this disciplined student that gets their things, and they get tested, they get an A, and that's how they know whether they are good or bad.
Want,
And what I personally think is to get back to, let's not worry about the test, and let's not worry about the grade. Let's talk about how much are we learning here. If I gave you a bucket of stuff from Dedow's farm, could you make something work?
Right.
And we don't do that. Part of it is we don't have time. We've squashed a lot of standards into a little bit of time now. And part of it, I think, is that our culture, I just think that's the way we're moving. We only ever talk about grades. We only ever talk about the outcome. And then when you go to college, if you go to college, or even when you're done with high school, your resume is your grades.
Exactly.
It's your GPA.
Yeah.
And it looks good if you worked at Ion Oshkosh as a volunteer.
Right.
But really, is that going to set you apart from anybody? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, really excellent point. You've talked in the past, Allison, I know, especially when you first got on the board. What year did you first get on?
It was 4 years ago, so
okay,
2010.
2010, right. And I know at that time you were talking, and Steve has also talked about the need for the district to be better long-range planners.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why you were saying that is that in open enrollment, we were losing a lot more students out of the district than were coming in. But I looked at the data in 2012, 2013, 70 in, 202 out. And in 2013-14, 104 in, and 203 out. My sense is that the planning has improved. Yes. But these numbers are not improving at all.
Right.
So first talk about the planning. Are you satisfied now that the district is doing better planning than when you first got on the board?
Absolutely.
All right, what are we doing that's better?
Okay, we have a strategic plan.
All right.
So I would love to tout that because that was huge. We didn't have one in 2010. Okay. We got one now, so that's great. You know, we actually have a bit of a map. We had a lot of community input, and thank God for the Community Foundation because they really, really helped with that.
I agree that.
It was them, and it was their deal, and you know, there were times when I was really resistant to it. I was worried about where it was going to go, and yet they pulled it off. They did a great job, and we all bought into it in the end.
And I credit Stan Mack, too, for that, because
yes.
he came in right at the onset of that and was resistant.
He was handed this. Said, go make it work.
And so he was receptive to it.
All right, so we have the strategic plan,
Yep.
and it's being implemented.
Absolutely.
We're acting on the plan.
Yes.
I mean, part of that probably was the referendum,
Yep.
right? The technology referendum and things like that.
Yep.
You're satisfied that the planning is better now than it was?
Absolutely, the planning is better. To get back to your question, you know, we sit there and we look at the data. We have exit interviews and all this other stuff. It's hard to track down people about why they take their kids out. Certainly, some of it is the voucher program. Certainly, some of it is
those kids are represented in these numbers.
Yes.
Yes, they
So
are.
when someone leaves the public school system and goes into a voucher school in Oshkosh, that counts?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
the economics of the situation, if you look for Oshkosh, and that's why the whole business atmosphere here as well. I don't know if this is true or not, but I have been told that certain retail or realtors will sit there and tell people that they have a better school system in Neenah. There's all these little things that are going on. And I think a lot of this, her and myself live on the south side of town in the lakeside attendance area. And we both know that because of the up and down, close the school, open the school, open the school, close. No one wants to have their kid put through this kind of uncertainty. They want stability.
Okay.
And I think this whole thing when they closed Green Meadow with 2 weeks prior to the start,
That's why I joined the board.
huge wound.
Bad.
And that's where I believe a lot of those numbers, well, you had numbers on that too.
At that time, Lakeside had the highest percentage. It had 25% open enrollment. Actually, I'm sorry. Lakeside at one time had 25% of its student population went to private school. They were so mad that they didn't even go to a different school that would have been free. They yanked them out of the whole district. They just said, I've had it. You guys, I'm done with you. You're fired.
25%. That's
25% of that population.
That's almost unbelievable.
It was horrible. It
Yeah.
was horrible.
And that's why we're fixing it now by putting that addition on there, using TIF money,
Yeah.
so we don't have to go to referendum on this, and fixing this problem, which is now, what, 7 years or so, 6
Yep.
years?
Yeah.
Of Green Meadow, putting Green Meadow and Lakeside, which that was supposed to be the community, now they will be together like they should have been 6 years ago.
All right, so that'll help out with some of these open enrollment numbers.
I think it'll
right?
stabilize the
All right,
hemorrhaging.
but you mentioned the voucher program, which the governor said if he got reelected, which he did.
There'll be no debate.
Right. The voucher program already was expanded statewide, but I think that he and the Republican legislature want to see it more students enroll. We already have, how many students in Oshkosh do we have in the voucher right now? Is it like 40?
Yeah, it's not much. It's
Something like that.
I wanted to
Right.
say 60,
Right.
but maybe it's 40. I don't know.
If 40 to 60, in that range, it probably will grow, right? What are the, in your judgment, what are the consequences of that? It's essentially now taxpayers are running two school systems. Is that fair?
It's absolutely not fair, especially the way that it's being administered. I mean, if you're going to have the thing that I don't know if I could buy into the whole voucher program for private schools if they do not have an accountability program with it. If there's no accountability to it, then what's the point? I mean, we have to jump through hoops in public schools, and if private schools are just going to be getting money and there's no standards there, there's no accountability there.
And wasn't it, Steve and Allison, wasn't the voucher program originally supposed to help low-income kids?
Yes, originally.
Now they don't even look at the income, correct?
I don't know.
Anyone can be, right?
Yep.
In other words, if the parent can afford to pay for the private education, why are the taxpayers then subsidizing it? What's the logic behind that? And I don't understand why the media doesn't expose that, right? I mean, I strongly support private schools. I went to Catholic school in New York as a kid, my parents, who were not high-income people,
It was
found,
so important that you
right,
went to that, yeah.
they wanted us to have Catholic education,
Yeah,
right? They found a way to
absolutely,
pay for it. It would never have even occurred to them to go to the government and ask for a voucher to do it, right? And I could possibly support it for very low-income families, but we're not doing that.
No.
All right, so what's the long-term consequences of it? Suppose now the legislature and the governor greatly expand the program. Suppose we're allowed to have as many students as possible in Oshkosh who want to do private vouchers can do it. How is that going to affect our public school system?
Here's the only thing that I can say about that, is that we have got to be competitive, and that is what I ran on 4 years ago. I'll run on it again when I run again. We have to be competitive, and if someone's going to help you out with a voucher, then we have to be that much better. We have to be better, because people are going to move their kids out, and if you make them mad, they will work 2 jobs to take their kids out and put them in a private school. So we'd better be better than the private schools, and we better be better than our communities in Neenah, Menasha, and Appleton, which is where most of our kids are going. When you look at the data, the open enrollment data, not voucher kids, but just kids going from this public to their public,
Right.
there's a lot of kids doing that.
And it's to Appleton, and a lot of it was because of technology.
Okay.
They also have 15 charter schools. Parents today want choice.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, that's what they want. And if you don't give it to them, they're going to go find it somewhere else.
So we do have a technology initiative now, right?
Absolutely.
The voters passed that. Explain that to us. What is our taxpayer money now going to get for us now with the technology? What have we already gotten as a result of it? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we just unveiled the Chromebooks, 850 Chromebooks books for teachers.
Okay.
Spent an entire day, rolled it out in a single day. Teachers were able to come in, it was already unpackaged, which, as we all know, is a huge nightmare. So they pick up their Chromebook, they get their package, they bring it, they check it out. The whole system was done. They check their ID, they line it up for inventory. They were done within 15 minutes. We have 850 teachers whose average time from check-in to check-out was 15 minutes.
And one of the big differences here is we're one of the few districts who are doing it this way.
So we're going to do teachers first.
Yep, teachers first. Before all the other districts stick it in the kids' hands right
And then
away, and
nobody
then the
knows.
teachers don't know how to use the technology,
Right.
let alone develop curriculum. I mean, we're definitely moving more to individualized learning plans. Or with tracking of kids on Infinite Campus and the way that you can set, and if one child doesn't read quite as well as another, or is more coherent in science or something, you can tailor make things in technology. You can flip the classroom, where you have the teacher essentially sending a video lecture home with the child, and then they answer the questions one-on-one when they're in the classroom instead of asking mom and dad.
You know, I was following the debate about the referendum, the technology referendum, and there were some people who were concerned about the cost, and that wasn't, for me, that wasn't the main issue. But I did think that some people were making some, at least points that should be debated about how we assume that more technology in education is a good thing. And if other school districts are doing it, then we have to do it, right?
No.
But some people were arguing that, are we losing that kind of face-to-face contact between teacher, student, and students between each other? I mean, again, as a college teacher, when my first-year students come to school now, I have to pull them away from their cell phones, right? Technology is like a fetish, right? Repeated warnings in the syllabus, can't do it. Is what we're doing enabling that behavior, or?
For myself, Tony, I really believe in it. And the reason I believe in it, if we're going to do nothing more than replace a textbook with a Chromebook, then no, don't do it. But if we're going to allow, in the days like when South Carolina seceded in December 20th, 1860 to start essentially the Civil War, I don't have to remember that. My kids don't have to remember that anymore. They can Google it. And what's more important now, in my opinion, is what questions do we ask? Not finding the answers to when South Carolina seceded, but why? And I think that is what technology will enable. We have both witnessed things from second graders who brought in YouTube, created stuff that they did. They edited, they put the music together.
They made a video
About a rainforest monkey or something. And that kid, that child, you can't tell me that little child did not remember a lot more by creating that product than they did by just... the days, I think, of educators, and this is the way it was, I think, when I was a child, the educator would see students as an empty vessel, and my job as an educator is to fill that vessel up. I think technology opens the door and blows the door off the hinges.
But ultimately, what a lot of taxpayers are concerned with is this is all great, but is it going to result in better reading scores? Is it going to result in higher math performance scores? Do you think it will? I mean,
well, here's the way that I think we should all look at it, is that technology is only a tool.
Yes.
And so if you don't use it in an efficient and effective way, then no, nothing's going to go up, which is why our plan is really deliberate, and we're trying to get teachers comfortable with the device, then planning out all of our professional development with them so that they can utilize the tool to enhance learning. So yes, the theory, and it was asked many times by board members and community members alike, that, okay, we're going to go spend a lot of money.
Right, exactly.
These scores better go up. And they all said, you know, we're going to use the tool, we're going to give them the training that they need, and then we're going to see if it works.
And they started the baseline, I think, too, with that. They were creating a baseline right now, so we know what we can tell. So there is the accountability.
Okay. What kind of feedback are you hearing from the teachers so far? They are comfortable with the Chromebooks?
There's a lot of smiles.
Really?
Yeah.
They took surveys the day that, because then after the 15 minutes of checking out, then they went to different classrooms and they did their training there. So it was a full day of training that teachers did that whole day. And they did a survey of where you started the day, what what was your top concern that day, and then how did you feel about it at the end? It was, 4 or 5 questions essentially, and they showed us the data last night. And teachers came in with very little knowledge. They were, depending on what part of the school, whether they were elementary or secondary. They came in either at the kind of in the, I'm not really confident to, middle of the line, but nobody was at a 10, right?
Right.
And when they left, every single group had moved almost solidly over to the 8, 9, 10 level.
Oh, wow.
And when they talked about what they had learned that day and their satisfaction, it was almost all 9s and 10s. So I think they're feeling valued, and I think they're ready to go and use these tools.
Good. So obviously the Chromebooks were a part of the referendum. Are there other technology initiatives coming out of this?
Smart boards, but we're moving along really good with that already.
What's happening with that?
The smart boards in pretty much every classroom, the training that goes along
Explain
with that.
for people what the smart boards are. What do they do?
It's essentially it's replacing the chalkboard with an electronic wide device.
It's an interactive touch screen board.
So the teacher controls it? Okay.
Or the kid.
Or the children can.
A child can read a thing, Johnny jumps over the rock, and then you hit the button, the child goes up and reads it, and they hit the word jump, and the bunny jumps. So it's interactive, and you can do a lot of things with it. I think at the elementary level, it's amazing. You watch little kids really, I don't know.
So it sounds like you both think that ultimately this technology is enhancing the educational experience. It's not like a brave new world of
Well, I think when the questions, maybe when they had brought in rulers to the classroom, or maybe people were anti-ruler. I don't know.
What do you expect to be the life cycle of these Chromebooks? Are they
1 to 3 years is the plan.
Okay.
We will phase them in every group gets a new one every 3 years, and we're going. Our goal is to go 1-to-1 with all
the
students.
Concerns about kids breaking these and all this stuff. We did what was
we
it
did
last
the data.
Year? Well, it was 1.2%.
Teachers
broke
more.
No, I'm sorry. It was 0.1.
Yeah, it was the teachers that was like over 1%.
Yeah, it was
they
the
lost
teachers
and broke
over.
more than the kids.
Yeah.
Wow. Do kids get to bring any of this technology home?
Oh yeah, it's
Okay.
theirs. They keep it. It's theirs. They've got they got a barcode on it.
Okay, they keep it. And every school in the district?
The goal is to have 1-to-1 in every school. Right now, we're not there.
All right.
A lot of schools have them though.
The secondary high schools will get them first next year, then the middle schools, then the elementary schools.
Okay. And the goal, though, is to have every child in every school have it. Okay. I guess that's a good transition to the tax issue. That's an issue, obviously, that everyone is concerned with. It sounds like the school district is increasing taxes by 7.1%. Is that right?
Yeah, our budget isn't done yet, but
Okay.
it's going to be pretty small.
How do we justify the tax increase? I mean, when a lot of people hear, let's assume for the sake of argument, it's 7%. A lot of people hear that number and think that that's a high number.
Okay.
So how do we justify it?
14 million of it is going for energy exemption bond issues. Quite frankly, Tony, for the last 15 years prior to 2010, $70 million worth of deferred maintenance was allowed to build up. as people continued to kick the can down the road, let the roofs rot off and everything else. When this board got on, when we were elected, since that time, and if you go through 2016, I just got the numbers for this, we've reinvested $55 million to knock down that 70 million in 6 years. So I think that's a pretty serious recommitment of taking care of our buildings. Now, with the city, the community accepted Oak Lawn, $13 million.
Yep.
We can't build new schools, so we need to take care of our old schools. Any boiler that's older than me is not a good thing. I mean, they had a 72-year-old boiler over at Merrill. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, but you're right. We've had deferred maintenance in the school district, deferred maintenance in the city, I think the county. But unfortunately, we did have this economic downturn in 2008.
We did.
Kind of inched out of it. So at the very moment we need to invest, people are feeling more strapped.
Absolutely.
So how do you respond to that? When people say, I hear what you're saying, we shouldn't have 72-year-old boilers, but on the other hand, we are feeling kind of strapped. And basically what they're asking is, what is the district doing to kind of maintain the low cost, or to try to reduce costs?
Well, we're doing a ton, first of all. The $24 million that we are issuing for the maintenance is, it has to qualify and it has to save money long term. And so what we're saying is we're going to put really good windows in so we don't lose so much energy and we're paying a lot in fuel, gas, and electricity. So in the end, yeah, the payback stinks. It just stinks for energy, but that's the nature of the beast. So it might be 10, 20-year payback, but there is a payback there. If we leave things as they are, we're continuing to throw money out the window, and nobody wants to do that.
She is correct. On $21 million that we invested right now, and this was 2 years ago, we are recouping over $800,000 a year in energy savings. Now, if you look at that, it's a 20-year bond, $21 million, that we borrowed. If we're saving almost $800,000 a year, this almost becomes cost neutral. You're
does,
right.
yeah.
The payback sucks because it takes 20 years.
But that's energy. It always sucks for energy.
Yeah, it does. But you're right, it does ultimately pay for itself after a while. You mentioned earlier, Steve, and this relates to taxes, that we're going to be getting some money from a retired TIF district to help out with is it
Lakeside.
Lakeside, right? But the other side of that is, I know that when the city wants to create a TIF district, the school district has to approve of it, right? I don't think that the school district has ever said no.
No, we've never said no.
No.
Not in my 4 years. Never.
Well, I think ever, all right? And not all TIF districts have been successful, right? Do you think that we need more oversight of the TIFs that are created, and that school districts ought to be more willing to at least be a little bit more critical of them, or maybe do a little bit more negotiating for them, that if the school district is going to support a TIF, we want such and such in return? I don't even know if you legally can do that. But it just seems to me that it's been a rubber stamp to support TIFs.
I hear you. The city, we are, as one of the 4 taxing entities that's part of a committee to approve TIFs. And the city, for years, it seemed like, had not even bothered to come to the board meetings to explain why they wanted to create a TIF. We did kind of stop that the city has sent some people to explain one of the last TIFs that they wanted to create.
That's good to hear.
So we are hearing more about what's going on with these things.
Because just so people understand, a TIF district, tax incremental finance district, can usually run for as much as 25 years, let's say. And in that 25 years, tax money does not go to the school district. Right?
True.
So if you add up the sheer number of TIF districts in Oshkosh, and you think about all the money that is not going to the school district, it adds up. So there should be more rigor, I think, in looking at it. And it sounds like you both agree.
Well, I do, except that when we talk about it, typically we're not collecting taxes at that point anyways. Usually the businesses have gone under, and usually it's a blighted area.
Or it's a farmland that they want to put Generac on.
Right, but the city wants people to believe that without the creation of a TIF, nothing will happen in that area for 20 years. And I just find that hard to believe, that any city with competent planners would allow that much of a city to remain vacant and lifeless for 20, 25 years. All right? I mean, when I was on the city council, try and have this debate, and I would always be on the losing side of it. But, because, you understand why, we all understand why tips are popular, right? I mean, everyone wants economic development, right? But I just think it can be done in ways to make sure that we are going to get the bang for the buck, and that it's really thrilling to hear that we are getting a payoff now, right?
We are this year.
There was 300,000 last year, 1.3 million this year, and I think it's 2016, I want to say, is the last one, and that is something like 1.8 million that we get back.
Okay. Do you folks want to talk about any other accomplishments of the district over the last 4 years that maybe have not gotten enough press that we should talk about? Are there things that you're especially proud of?
You brought your list. I think you should start with your list.
He's got his list here?
I did.
Okay.
There is some stuff in here that, one of the things that when we hired Stan Mack, he's doing exactly what we wanted him to do, which is we did not want him sitting in his office. We want him out of his office and going to every possible function he can go to. And he has, I felt sorry for him. He attended every Christmas show last year. But he goes through all the schools, and this is something that had not happened before. I mean, when a superintendent goes out to a little school like Lakeside or over by Oakwood or something like that, this is a big deal. All these different, our relationship with the Chamber of Commerce is they supported, they came out in support of the referendum.
Right.
This is unheard of.
Right.
I'm very...
Well, it would have been really troubling for a business advocacy group to not support technology development in schools.
I would think.
But yeah, right. But having said that, I was a little bit surprised to see them support it too. But
it wasn't an easy sell.
It was not an easy sell.
No.
Right. But maybe they got the word that other districts are kind of doing it.
Stan.
You think Stan did the?
Well, first of all, Stan's done the groundwork, which was to build relationships in the community. He's done that, and so then Stan brings facts, and Stan brings people to the table, and he says, "Well, here are the facts. So tell me what you don't support here, and then let's talk about those facts." And that's what he does. He does it beautifully. And to the point where you get all the facts, and then you come to the same conclusion that all 7 board members came to, which is, oh, nuts.
Well,
we've got
classic example is the Budget Reconciliation Committee. You've got members, you got over 20 members of the communities. There's like a farmer from Utica, there's whoever, firemen, it's just all over, university students.
Oh, yeah.
Will sit there and they will go through this $141 million budget and see the problems, admire the problems, and that we're facing on some of these things. I think that has gone a lot to heal some of the community. The north side districting, that hadn't been done in 15 years.
What is that?
Where you redistrict to make sure that you're not spending too much money on transportation. There's security upgrades that we got because of the technology. Dave Gunlock, 2 years ago, said, we're going to get rid of the phone. We're getting rid of AT&T. And we're like, what? He said, every one of our schools has fiber optics. We will create our own phone network and save, it was like $95,000 a year on phone bills or something.
Okay.
And then he gets $300,000 from Cisco System to kick it in. The rainy day fund, when I got on the board, what they had done the first year was, instead of doing what the community suggested, which was they approved the referendum, $1.3 million in deferred maintenance. They did not tax for that. They took it out of our fund balance instead of taxing for it, even though the community said tax
we'll pay for it.
Right, we'll pay for it.
Please.
$7.5 million is now the rainy day fund is up to 14%, which is in compliance with the board policy. The whole deferred maintenance thing that I was bringing up before, I think that there's a lot of things that people don't know that we're going through. These on-site clinic. The county looks like they're ready to jump on board with this, as well as the city is still tinkering around with it, but I think they'll get there. This will save a lot of money on health, where if you have preventative stuff where people can go in and get like diabetes screenings and this kind of stuff instead of going to their HMO.
Right.
I mean, these are really progressive initiatives.
Okay. You know, as part of your long-term planning and strategic planning and whatnot, and you're talking about deferred maintenance, I know that a few years ago the idea was maybe we should close more schools, that maybe Oshkosh had too many neighborhood schools. I always thought the neighborhood schools in Oshkosh was a big appeal of our school system, right? Is that talk still on the table?
No. You know why?
Why?
We don't have room.
We don't have room for.
We don't have room. Our schools are full, and it was always, they
Yep.
have always been full. And when we shut down schools, we didn't save money, and our schools they were operating at 90+%
Okay.
capacity.
So
they
when
are full.
when Lincoln School closed, we didn't save any money.
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay, we
actually,
saved-
that created some problems because we had to close Lincoln because of the population there was way over the federal level for special needs.
Well, I was upset. I live close to Lincoln, and I thought the closing of Lincoln was a classic example of the lack of communication between the school district and the city of Oshkosh, because the city of Oshkosh keeps saying that they want to develop inner city neighborhoods, right? If you want to build an inner city neighborhood, the last thing you would do is close the school.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And yet, no one from the city was coming to the school district.
And
making that
vice
point.
versa.
And vice
Nobody from
versa.
the school district ever
Right.
went to anybody in the
Right.
city. It was a short-sighted move. It didn't save a lot of money. We made more people mad.
Oh yeah.
And then
Yes.
so it
Yeah.
was a big,
I mean, thankfully the building is being used.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
at least
like
we have that much.
Lakeside,
Right.
we had to ship 9 kids because it was 9 over what they
Yeah.
could handle for kindergarten. So we had to send them kids into Smith. Oaklawn is already at like 90.
It's already
like
over capacity.
94% capacity.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, and that's like in 1 year.
Yeah.
all the schools on the north side are absolutely packed to the,
Yes,
to
they
the
are.
rafters, and we're trying to address that with districting. We will redistrict once we get on the south side, once we get Lakeside taken care of. We're going to make Lakeside a two-track K through 5. We might add pre-K, and we might add a 3rd track, or we will build the building such that we could add on another level if we needed to make it a 3-track school. There are a lot of people in that attendance area that don't go to that school. They go to private, but then there are a lot of other kids that don't go to that school either, and they
Right.
just go to other.
Exactly.
So
That's right. Okay. It sounds like you're both pleased with the superintendent.
Love him.
Stan Mack.
He's a
right?
great guy.
And he's been here now for 2 years, 3 years? Okay.
Which is close to a recent record.
Yeah. But he came out of retirement, is that correct?
Yeah, he was working for
He
the
was
state.
he was like the head guy in Minnesota for administrative ethics committee or something like that.
So, all right. So you like the fact that he gets around town, right? You
Like,
think
he builds relationships.
he
Yes.
builds relationships. You like that. You think he's good with the budget too, good with numbers
Absolutely.
and things
Well,
like that.
yeah, but we've got a great business manager.
Okay.
She is
She
outstanding.
is. We stole her from Fond du Lac.
Okay.
She's outstanding.
Oh, so we were able to keep an administrator or actually attract
We
one.
stole one.
Okay.
We stole Mike too.
We stole Mike from Fond du
Because
Lac.
we've had quite a few that have been, to use your word, stolen from us, right?
Yes.
We lose one administrator a month.
All right. Now, but apparently in the budget, there's an attempt to raise the salaries, right, of administrators. Is that correct?
There's 2 parts to that. One is to correct the salary or market adjust the salary ranges. We lose one administrator a month. We've lost 27 administrators in the last 2 years, 54 in the last 4 years. We're losing one a month.
That's what it averages out to, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And you think this is completely
So
due
we
to
can't do 2 things. We can't retain the ones that we have,
Okay.
and we can't attract anybody to come here. So what we have to do is at least be competitive when we talk about salary. It is the one thing we have to be able to do. Now, we also have to be a place where people want to work. We have to be a place that people want to stay. But the first thing to even get people to come talk to us is to actually be in the salary range. So we're going to market adjust those ranges, and we're going to be at least comparable to other districts around us. The second part of that is that we have 9 administrators right now that aren't even in their ranges.
Right.
So we might have to adjust their salaries to get them to the bottom
Or
of
we
those
can
ranges.
just lose
So
them.
give us some actual numbers. What kinds of increases are we talking about?
A
for
few
these?
thousand in each range.
All right.
It's nothing big.
And that's just the range. That's not per individual. There are some, like Allison,
The
there's
total
9.
for those 9 is $26,000.
Yes.
That's all we're talking about.
Yeah.
We put $1 million into teachers to bring them all up and to give everybody a CPI
But for the
increase.
teachers, is it like a 1.7%?
1.46 for CPI,
Okay.
and then bring what used to be the old, what was it called, steps and
Steps
lanes.
and lanes.
We brought everybody up. I think it's step, right?
I
Is
think
that
so,
right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So you think with these salary adjustments for the administrators, that will stop the bleeding, if you will?
It's the least that we can do. It's the least, the very least.
There's an administrator that we lost, Leslie Ballywag. She was really good. She helped with development of our new website, which is eons above what the other one was. She left us, and that wasn't rocket science. She was driving up here from Sun Prairie every day, and then driving home to some prairie every night. And she got a high school principal
And a raise.
offer and a raise to just do it down in Sun Prairie. Well, that's not
no-brainer.
rocket science. I mean, when the exit surveys, wages were one of the, it was at the top. But there were other things in there. A lot of it was family and commuting. It was like the second and third, which that there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that. I mean, if a person lives in Green Bay and they work here, unless they move down here.
Right.
You
said that for teacher salaries earlier, we rank kind of like in the middle of the over 400 schools, right?
222, I think is what he said.
So where are we for administrative salaries?
4 from the bottom.
We're fourth from the bottom.
We used to be at the bottom 5
We
years ago.
moved up 4 pegs from the very bottom.
I think a lot of people aren't familiar with that number.
Should we talk about it again?
424 districts, we were 424th 5 years ago.
Okay, wow. But of course, there are some people in the state who think that all 424 are just, that the administrative salaries are just excessive.
It's a very difficult balance.
It is a difficult balance. And of course, teachers are usually not necessarily upset about that, but, they know what administrators are doing. It's
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like at banks, right? Everyone knows the bank tellers are doing all the work, but there's some executive sitting somewhere who's, making
But live
10
a day,
times.
live a day in an administrator's world, and live a day
exactly.
as a teacher.
Yeah.
They're both they both work hard.
Exactly. So, where do you both think the district needs to go at this point? You're happy with strategic planning. You think we've got some goals. I mean, you're happy with the goals that we have, it sounds like. But what do you think can get in the way to kind of short circuit the progress we're making? Or what has to happen to maintain progress?
I think short-circuiting would be losing some key personnel in administration. I think that my 5 years that I've been doing this is, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Betty Lang or Don Vigwood or anything like that, but just the short time that they were there, initiatives would start and then they leave and then they die. So it was like false starts over and over again. And I think that if Stan has given us a commitment that he would stay here for 5 years, if that actually comes to fruition, 5 solid years of leadership will do a lot. I think that it's done a lot in 2 years. I mean, the passing of this referendum, I think the community is feeling better about things. I think when we heal the South Side, I think it will help to heal the South Side.
Well, every now and then something comes up that upsets people, like the bus issue. So what happened with that?
We fixed it.
All right, but why did it happen in the first place?
It's the beginning of the year, and it's difficult to get everybody where they need to be. And the biggest problem with the bus was the computer software that Cobison uses in our software. Our new Infinite Campus didn't feed in, and it crashed their system.
Okay.
That was the problem. So then they had old lists, and they sent their drivers out, and they did the best that they could, and we left kids, and we dropped, and then there was some training issues where we, dropped kids where we shouldn't have. So
what I've heard from some parents, and of course it's just anecdotes, you don't know what's a general feeling, is that it is hard sometimes to get communication from the district. We don't really have the public relations position anymore, do we?
No,
we
we
haven't
do
had
not.
that for a long time.
No, the public, from what I could tell, just doing some research on our history and stuff, they went ballistic. The community went ballistic when they suggested hiring a public relations person for $50K back in 2002.
Right, even though that position would be very, very valuable for situations like this.
A communication person, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, no business.
It's one of our goals.
Yes, it is.
But didn't they, with picking up children now, don't they pick up the elementary, the middle, and the high school students at different times?
Yes.
All right, isn't that then a problem for parents that have kids at different grade levels?
Yep, but it's the cheapest way to do transportation.
So that's what it is. It's
$180,000.
We use the same buses.
Okay.
The first route is the most expensive, but if we can use that same bus for a second and a third route, bingo, you got your money savings. Yep.
And
But
that's why, because we're trying to be frugal. We're
trying to save money.
Right. But are you satisfied with the way these policies get communicated to the parents?
No, none of us are.
No.
All right.
We complain about it, and we've all talked about, I understand that we are now in conversations with the UWO, and that they are going to hopefully help us along with the Community Foundation, because I think Beth Wyman is also in on the conversation, of trying to improve our communications. Again, we're broke. We don't have money, and to hire somebody for $50,000, we could have really great people for $50,000.
Well, I mean, the bus thing, that was to have the notices sent out. Why aren't they sent out like 10 days before, 2 weeks before
They
you'd
normally
think they would.
are.
Exactly.
And then I was told that in the month of August alone,
Yeah, they had 900.
900, yeah.
900 students changing 2 weeks before school.
Oh, wow.
Changing addresses.
Okay.
But the biggest problem
That's
was that
insane.
we'd switched to a new software with Infinite Campus, and
Yes.
so we were really, we were spinning our wheels on this, trying to get ready. We fed it to Copeson, and we crashed their system, and they were like,
All right. Finally, we only have a couple of minutes here. The school board these days seems like a pretty close-knit group, right? You have some good discussion,
Yes.
but there's a lot of unanimous votes.
yep.
Do you miss the days when you had a couple of recognized no votes? Do you think that's healthy for a district to have some more open dissent?
I think that certainly dissent is good. Opposing viewpoints are good. It opens up discussion.
Yeah.
To just be an obfuscationist for that purpose is, quite frankly, I don't think that doesn't serve any purpose. I mean, we had an open debate essentially last night discussing this administration's salaries, and we voted to postpone the change in the market salary and in the 9 people that Allison was talking about. We want to see a whole package. We want to see what it's going to cost to bring the paraprofessionals, the lowest of our paid employees, up to where they need, because they're way underpaid compared to districts. And we want to see all this at once. And I think that the idea of just rubber stamping stuff, it isn't happening. I mean, we're trying to listen and be respectful of each person's opinion on things. We disagree about stuff, but I think we listen to each other.
Right.
And when we do disagree, and there's enough of us coming together and saying, I just don't have enough information, we table it. And that's why we have a lot of unanimous, because we finally get to the point where we can all agree.
Okay. When people do have an issue with, say, their kid's school, who do you suggest that they initiate their communication with? I mean, should it be the building principal? Should it be a school board member?
The member should be the last person, actually. I mean, we do get a lot of people contacting us about it. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Sure.
But it should start closest to the problem. If you have an issue at your child's school, it should start with the principal. If you can't get justification there, you call central administration. Stan Mack talks to a lot of people. We sit there when we get emails, we'll pretty much just forward it on. If it's a curriculum issue, it goes to Julie Mosier or something like that. So.
Okay. Speaking of a local school, Webster Stanley is in dire need of an auditorium.
Yes.
Where are we with that?
Ooh, they did a blitz. In the last 2 days, they raised another, oh gosh, I don't remember what she said, $18,000?
They did raise $18,000.
Oh yeah, so
Okay.
I think they need to raise another 30 or something, but
Okay.
they're getting pretty darn close.
All right, so it's going to be mostly private fundraising.
That
does this.
That is what's going to end up happening.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
And
the district's going to match it.
oh, okay. But
So we're going to match. I mean, we said we pitch in this, and then they said
Right.
they pitch in half, so we went halvesies on
yeah.
it.
And it sounds like that the parents and others are doing
It's
their
Kathy
part.
Shearer.
Ah, okay.
Let's tell everybody who
All
the
right,
hero
all
is.
right.
It's Kathy Shearer.
Okay. It's been a fascinating hour. I want to thank both Steve Dedow, who, by the way, I forgot to mention is a great guitar player. We always have to mention that. Steve Dedow and Allison Garner, you're both very, very passionate about what's going on in the school district. People can find your contact info on the school district website. They can just Google it. Cheryl Hentz will be back at the next edition of Eye on Oshkosh. It's been really a pleasure taking her place in the last couple of episodes. But until next time, I'm Tony Palmeri, and I hope you join us again for another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Take care.